There's no business like show business. From actors, writers, directors, and behind-the-scenes crew, everyone loves being part of the biz, and everybody loves those Hollywood stories. My name is Bob McCullough. I'm married to Suzanne Herrera McCullough, and between the two of us, we've got over 200 hours writing, producing, directing, or acting in some of the most classic television series and movies of all time. We've had pretty high-profile careers working with a wide range of celebrity talent and helping beginners get their start in the business, so people have always told us we should write a book. Well, we think getting our story out this way could be a lot more fun, so let's jump in.
Chicken joke!
I'm Mrs. Cleaver.
From Television City in Hollywood.
Boy, the way Glenn Miller plays.
We can rebuild him. We have the technology.
Nanu.
Baby, you're the great.
Here comes the judge.
More cowbell.
Not special.
There's anything wrong with that?
And now for something completely different.
There's no business like show business like.
Hi, this is Where Hollywood Hides,
I know.
podcast episode number 16. My name is Bob McCullough,
And this is Suzanne Herrera McCullough.
and today we're talking about a couple of episodes that I wrote on Star Trek: The Next Generation.
That was a very big show.
It was huge. It was actually one of the very first syndicated shows, and the only one to ever, I think at the time, when they finally wrapped up, it was the longest running syndicated show in history, and second only in future dates to The X-Files.
That's very cool. Last weekend was a big weekend here in Santa Barbara.
It sure was.
There was a garage sale.
And not your normal garage sale.
Well, it's a little different from ours by thousands of people.
And about $500,000, right?
Yes, it was Oprah Winfrey's garage sale.
And where was that? At the Santa Barbara,
Polo Fields.
at the Polo Fields, that's
Had
right.
quite a few friends email us, send us pictures, and give us their rundown on what an awesome event it was. We were not there. We were doing other things. But from what I hear and the pictures I saw, Oprah looked great.
We posted some of that up on the website so folks can get a chance to see what's going on. Even a little video of the actual event itself.
You're getting pretty good about that.
Call me Mr. Tech.
So I guess the big surprise on Saturday was, for some people anyway, that Oprah was there. I guess it wasn't really announced that she was going to be there.
I think it's pretty cool that it wasn't announced and she just showed up like she was part of the crowd.
Did you see those two huge bodyguards next to her?
Well, yeah. I mean, even though it is Santa Barbara where Hollywood hides, just still somebody of her renown with paparazzi and all that. I think that's a pretty good move, actually.
It's a lot of great PR for our wonderful little community of Santa Barbara, Summerlin, Carpinteria, Montecito.
I'm surprised you weren't there picking up some more lamps.
No, I'm trying to get rid of a few myself.
Anyway, it was a big deal, big event. International press was here. And, you know, it's always fun to have celebrities like that kind of doing the normal thing, like having a garage sale.
And I heard the money is going to
Her foundation.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Her school in Africa. So it's really a cool thing. And she raised over $600,000 in one afternoon.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of stuff in your garage.
Right. And I'm sure those things were worth millions at one point. But
I suppose. My guess is, though, that people overpaid for a couple of things just because they were Oprah's.
I would think she would have made a lot more.
You think?
I thought it would have been millions.
Well,
3 houses full of furniture.
yeah, but
I mean, I can't tell you what I've spent in our little house.
almost that much. But
it was a garage sale, a yard
Right,
sale.
right. And I don't think they were antiquities necessarily, but they were just really fun, kitschy, decorator pieces, stuff like that.
I don't know. Maybe you're right.
I don't think it was like, priceless art or anything.
Yeah. Anyway, it was a beautiful day. You couldn't have picked a better day to put on a yard sale. And I wonder if very many other yard sales did as well that day, because we have quite a few in town.
That's true. It's a kind of a weekend thing here.
I am so excited. The holidays are here. Before we go on, I want to remind everybody listening to us that Amazon.com is not only the world's biggest shopping mall, but it's the world's easiest place to do all of your holiday shopping. And it's even easier when you go to our website, wherehollywoodhides.com, because you'll see direct links to DVDs, books, CDs, music downloads, and all the memorabilia of all the shows and celebrities that we talk about here at the best possible prices anywhere. I can't tell you how many amazing things we found here and that we can't find anywhere else. I know that Bob is doing some shopping for me this week. Well, he better be. But one thing for sure, Bob's a real bargain hunter who does all of his research right on Amazon. Anyway, just go to wherehollywoodhides.com and click on any of the podcast links and Amazon banners you see on any of the pages, and you'll be supporting these podcasts and saving yourself some serious money and hassle. You'll be happy you did it. Happy holidays. Before we go on, what happened to your face?
Is my face going to be a topic today?
Well, it's just I haven't gotten this close to your face, and you have quite a few Band-Aids on there.
Well, as a youth and as a surfer, I've spent far too much time in the sun. So I had a couple of procedures, if you will.
I hope I didn't embarrass you bringing that up.
Well, gosh, am I blushing? I don't know. But since my face won't be on the podcast,
thank God our faces won't be on the podcast.
Happy to talk about it. I had some procedures, and they cut a bunch of junk off. And give it a couple of weeks, and I will be young and vibrant once again.
You still look good, honey.
Oh, thanks. So anyway, Star Trek The Next Generation was a show that I worked on for an entire season right after O'Hara and the kind of the debacle of that. And my agents at Creative Artists found that Gene Roddenberry was looking for real writers as opposed to just science fiction writers.
What year are we talking here?
This is like late 88, I believe, going into the spring of 89. And the show was really considered kind of derivative of the original Star Trek. And the curious thing is, the guys at CAA said, would I be interested in Star Trek? And I said, as long as they aren't wearing those pajamas anymore. Because if you recall, when I first got into the business, I was working for Barry Crane on Mission Impossible and Mannix.
Right.
We shared office space in the same building with Gene Roddenberry and the original Star Trek. And I was always amazed about how cheesy the costumes looked in the original Star Trek, having no notion whatsoever that it was going to become an iconic.
But you weren't a Trekkie, so you couldn't appreciate the whole ambiance, the whole idea.
No. I was still living in the 50s when about old robot movies and things like that. To me, that was science fiction, or
right.
Journey to the center of the Earth, or...
Is this something you wanted to do?
No, not at all. I was never a Star Trek fan or even a science fiction fan. I was just a fan of good writing and storytelling. And so anyway, I come off of O'Hara, and the guys at CAA want get me an interview with Gene Roddenberry. Now you have to remember, Gene Roddenberry was the original creator of the entire franchise. He was very much an icon in the sci-fi groupie world. So it was supposed to be a big deal for me to meet him. And he took me to lunch at his private club up on Sunset Boulevard. We drove up there in his Rolls-Royce.
So let me ask you, you must have been a big deal for him to even want to meet with you.
Well,
right?
I suppose,
There's so many writers vying for this position.
Oh, for sure.
As a writer, at the very least.
Oh, for sure. There must have been legions, long lines of people wanting to have that lunch. How I got it is really, maybe it happened behind the scenes. Maybe it was because I'd done so many successful shows prior to that. But at any rate, we had this lunch, the drive in the Rolls-Royce, a black and green Rolls-Royce, I remember very well. Impressed me is that he was a very kind of normal guy. He was just a regular guy. Very tall, big man, a former Los Angeles police officer.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Didn't know that.
No, and he had just began writing while he was still a cop. And he told me that whole story. It was kind of intriguing.
So he didn't look like an alien
No,
type.
not at all. No, not at all. He looked like a guy who worked on a crew. Just a kind of a big, hulky guy. Fairly soft-spoken and very much into the legend of Star Trek and his own legend, really. So we had this very long lunch. He had about 3, maybe 4 martinis. Now, even though he was a big guy...
This was at lunch?
This was at lunch. And I'm having probably the cold poached salmon and iced tea, and he's having 3 or 4 martinis. And I was starting to wonder about the drive back to the studio.
I bet you were.
To tell you the truth. But I guess I passed muster. It was a very kind of informal conversation. I thought that the best thing I could do was tell him what I could bring to the show. And I admitted straight up that I knew nothing about science fiction. I had flunked chemistry in college. And my whole thing was really about character, all about the people, as opposed to aliens and other worlds and astronomical phenomena. And that seemed to strike a chord with him. He said, well, that's what he really feels that the show needed at that time. So next thing I know, I've got a contract and I have a beautiful office on the 3rd floor of the Paramount production building.
I remember that.
It was the same building that I had offices in when I was a location manager, gosh, I don't know, 15 years earlier. So it was really kind of the coming home again to Paramount Studios. So it was a great place to be working, although I discovered that I was going to report to a man named Bert Armus, who was then the executive producer, head writer of the show. And he was done a lot of cop shows, very charismatic guy himself, kind of a big blustery sort.
Because I remember you weren't that excited about working on Star Trek. I remember you were happy to get the job and the money.
Right.
But
the show itself, to me, it was just another TV show.
Right.
And I didn't realize what a big deal it was because I had never seen more than one episode of the prior series.
Well, I think you and I realized it was a big deal because that's all you heard about, but I never ever imagined you writing for that show.
Well, and you have to remember, Star Trek The Next Generation was a syndicated show, so it didn't have nearly the cachet of a network series at the time. So I'm reporting to Bert Armus on a Monday, and by Wednesday, Bert Armus is gone. He got fired.
Oh, welcome to show business.
So suddenly I'm kind of like without my report to rudder, if you will, and Bert's second in command, a guy named Maurice Hurley, took over the reins as co-executive producer, head writer.
And what were you?
I was a producer writer. They have, titles. They'd rather give you titles than money, and there were a lot of titles on Star Trek The Next Generation. So I meet Maurice Hurley, and he was a guy very much like, there was an old comedian named Stan Freberg back in the 50s. Wild curly hair, big square glasses, and kind of loud, arm-waving, boisterous personality.
You kind of lost me there.
I know, way before your time.
A little bit.
But Maurice was very bright, very loquacious, quick with a joke, glib as hell, and he had a very particular writing style. And I have to remember, he had come from the advertising world. So to him, everything was a log line. What's going to close the deal? So I would start pitching stories to Maurice Hurley, and he would say, no, just tell me the ending. Well, half the time I didn't know what the ending was. I just knew what the setup was, what the characters were.
That's interesting.
And I was more accustomed to writing stories writing scripts from an outline and writing an outline from an idea. He didn't care about the idea. He just wanted to know what the final scene of the show was. And that's what he made me write. Write the last scene and then write the rest of the script to that.
Isn't that bizarre?
To me, it was backwards.
Of course.
I felt left-handed through the whole thing. It was just, I felt
challenged again.
Completely off balance. It was really weird. And the other kind of dynamic that was going on while I was struggling to write stories and scripts backwards was that Paramount, the year before, had brought one of their production executives on board to, quote, help Gene Roddenberry with the show. Now, Gene Roddenberry had a lot of experience, but generally speaking, his shows went over budget. They were very expensive to produce, and they wanted somebody to control those costs. So they brought a guy in by the name of Rick Berman, really kind of a production guy. And because Gene wasn't feeling all that well, he was actually, unbeknownst to many of us, becoming ill. And I don't think that his alcoholism helped very much. And I think Rick Berman really saw a power vacuum there of some sort, and he began having a lot of influence. By the time I got there, Rick Berman took me aside and said, don't worry about what Gene says. You have to get everything cleared by me. Well, that's not what I heard at lunch.
Right.
And it's not what I heard from Maurice Hurley, who said that he was in charge of all the stories.
Sounds like a mess.
It became difficult, particularly when Maurice Hurley and Rick Berman could barely stand the sight of each other.
So you were in the middle.
I was very much in the middle. Here I was, picked by Gene. Rick Berman did not interview me, did not approve me. I go to work. Bert Armus is there. Bert Armus gets fired. I'm now working under Maurice Hurley, and Maurice Hurley and Rick Berman aren't even talking. So Maurice would say to me, go tell Rick this. So here I am, the messenger, and Rick is the guy saying that he's in control. It was almost Shakespearean in its complexity and very difficult working environment, particularly when Gene Roddenberry still had great control over every line of dialogue and every script, even though he wouldn't read them until the very last minute. You would go off and write an outline, and he would say, sounds good to me, keep writing, give me the script. Maurice Hurley would say, great, just write me the last scene first. And
oh my God.
You would come up with a script, and suddenly Gene Roddenberry would say, well, who said you could write this? Who approved this idea? Well, you can't tell him that he approved the idea, and if you hate it, pal, it's your fault. So there were some fine lines to be walked there, but eventually I kind of worked through all of that. And again, I may have mentioned this in earlier episodes. Part of being a television writer producer is really being able to get along with people as much as it is to be able to write well.
Oh, and you're so good at that, Bob.
Well, I used to be much better at it. And you just have to learn to kind of keep your mouth shut, particularly in meetings. Because in the meeting, you'll hear three people arguing over something about which they may know very little, and you're the guy who has to go out and actually execute it. So I would just sit there and take notes and listen, and then go up to my third floor office and try to make it happen on paper. You have to remember, this is before computers.
Right.
So,
and cell phones.
So rewrites were a little bit, they were a mechanical challenge in those days. It was all typewriters.
It's that typewriter.
Yeah.
Click, click, click.
Exactly.
So I think what the audience that are real fans of Star Trek really would like to know is, did you have the opportunity to meet any of the cast members? And if so, who? And can you tell us a little bit about them?
Well, sure. I mean, you have to understand, as a producer-writer, I was on the set every day. So I don't want to say intimate, but closely involved with the actors, because every actor on every show always has problems with their dialogue.
I noticed that when you were on the show, your hairstyle started changing. You were kind of...
What?
I'm just kidding.
What?
You're kind of like spiking it.
Oh, I was turning into a Klingon or something?
Yeah, some weird husband, Trekkie. I'm kidding.
Yeah, I used to snap my collars up, too. So, no, I was on the set day in and day out with Patrick Stewart, who played Captain Jean-Luc Picard.
So what about Patrick Stewart?
Well, I'll get to him in a minute.
Okay.
Jonathan Frakes played Lieutenant Commander William Riker, and LeVar Burton from Roots fame played Lieutenant Geordi. Brent Spiner, who was really a very good actor and kind of restricted in his role as Lieutenant Commander Data, a little bit of a humanoid robot character. They were all really good actors, I'll put it that way. They were all very, very different personalities. And one of my jobs was to go to the cast reads. And that involved, they would bring a deli lunch in, big conference table, and the cast would read the next script. Not the script they were shooting, the one that was coming, looking for issues and rewrite opportunities, things like that.
Wow, that sounds like a nightmare, because were actors, were they able to put their input?
Well, I had never been on a show where actors did have...
This is like being on a play.
A lot of input. I mean, Jane Wyman back on Falcon Crest, she pretty well called shots if she had problems with dialogue. But she was, articulate and brilliant and very experienced, and she understood what the production issues were and that things had to move along. So I would walk into the cast reads on Star Trek The Next Generation and find out I'm the only writer there. Why wasn't Maurice Hurley there? Why wasn't Rick Berman there, the man who claimed he was running everything? Why wasn't Gene Roddenberry there, the man who created all of these characters and held sway over every script? They weren't there because they didn't want to be there, because they had been there before.
Because they knew what was coming.
And they knew this was not a fun experience for writers.
So set this up for us. Where did it take place? How big was the table? Was there food brought in? Let's give them a visual.
It took place in a trailer.
Oh.
On the Paramount back lot, which had been set up as a conference room. And it was just a bunch of large folding tables and folding chairs. And they brought food in from the commissary, because you have to understand, these guys were all in makeup and hair and costumes, because they were shooting throughout the day. So during their lunch break, their 42-minute lunch break, they would come in for the cast reading, for the script reading for the next show coming up. So I'm sitting there.
So you're the only humanoid there.
I'm the only one there in civilian clothes.
Right.
So I'm sitting there with Patrick Stewart, and he's dressed like Captain Jean-Luc Picard with the whole makeup and everything else, and everybody else is wearing their Star Trek uniforms. It was really a little weird, to tell you the truth.
Now, if you had had a cell phone, you would have been taking pictures, right?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely, for sure. It was weird because the actors, once they're in makeup and hair in a sci-fi scene like that, they act like their characters. They don't act like themselves anymore.
Well, maybe
they're always in the role.
Maybe that's semi-common in a lot of shows. Only this show, they had to show up like that.
Yeah. Nothing about it was normal. I'll put it that way. They're actually acting and reacting to me as a person as though they are these characters.
Got it.
So I was involved in an early script that got shot down, and it was a very, very, very uncomfortable meeting, because Patrick Stewart, Mr. Royal Shakespeare, in my opinion, was a very difficult cat. I don't want to say that he was a raging asshole, But he
Bob.
was very difficult for me personally because he went through the script word for word, changing vocabulary that he thought was more articulate. Now, there were reasons certain things were written in scripts in a certain way that were not necessarily apparent
So
in
this
Act
was
1.
the script that was turned down, you said?
There were a number of
Oh, I
scripts that were
see. Okay.
jettisoned. That was one of the problems the show was having. For the 20 episodes they did that season, they probably wrote 36 scripts. And the cast would throw them out. Gene Roddenberry would throw them out. Rick Berman would throw them out. They spent a lot of money on scripts, and they went through writers like crazy. I was that season, one of the few writers who made it through the entire season. They brought a lot of guys in under 3 script contracts. They got 1 script out of them and paid them off, and kind of, I don't know, disposable writers was the syndrome. So anyway, these cast readings were really tough. I thought that Jonathan Frakes, who played the number 2 guy in the show, was really very astute and very reasonable.
What character did he play?
He played William Riker, Captain William Riker, the number 2 in command on the Starship fleet. But he had to take a back seat to Patrick Stewart, who acted like the captain. Patrick Stewart should have had an executive producer credit because he certainly acted like one. Jonathan Frakes, I thought, was a real gentleman, and I really enjoyed meeting with him and working with him. And I determined I was going to write to the people I liked, because if I have to be on the set with these guys and in readings with them, I only want to be with the people I like. LeVar Burton was great. Brent Spiner was great. Patrick Stewart was not great. I'll put it that way.
Okay, I got that.
So again, understanding I'm rewriting a lot of scripts. We're going through material like crazy. Maurice Hurley is trying to write everything backwards. The hours were very, very long and difficult. So my job was to keep coming up with ideas. And because I wasn't a Trekkie per se, didn't really know a lot about the whole sci-fi background of the show, I kind of began writing in a kind of a counterculture way to Star Trek in general. And one of the shows I wrote, because I thought Jonathan Frakes was such a good actor and his character had never really been fully explored, I wrote an episode called The Icarus Factor, in which Captain Jean-Luc Picard has a heart problem. I was trying to kill off Patrick Stewart, to tell you the truth. So I gave him a serious heart problem from years ago and sent him off the Enterprise and sent him off on a little pod spaceship with Wesley Crusher, who was taking him to some asteroid to have his heart work done, just to get him out of the set. So I wrote him about 3 or 4 scenes where he's sitting in a little capsule.
Was he happy about that?
I think he was, because it gave him a short week.
Right.
Instead of having to report to work for 7 days straight, he only had to report to work 2.5 days. And then I got to work with Jonathan Frakes and his character. And the story, real quickly, involved William Riker, Frakes' character. It involved his father coming on board to train him as the next commander, because he was going to get his own command of a starship.
Right.
And the character of William Riker was a little insecure about it. He'd always been under Jean-Luc Picard. He wasn't certain if he could really handle a command on his own. So his father comes on board to test him, and it becomes a father-son battle. Got to explain and explore a lot of father-son issues. We put a martial arts fight in the middle of it. There was a lot of action in the episode, and I tried like hell to kill off Jean-Luc Picard, but Gene Roddenberry would not hear of it. So he actually returned, and everything settled down to normal, and the status quo was returned.
Just because he gave you a hard time, you wanted to kill him off?
Well,
wow, that's brutal.
No, it was more than a hard time.
Yeah, and you're the guy that's trying to get along with everybody. Your
but
answer is just to kill him
but
off.
I was the new guy in the show. He did his best to embarrass me in front of the entire cast.
Well, that's kind of like a hazing kind of thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because
and I didn't appreciate it.
You have to understand, though, not that I'm an expert, but from what you've been saying, the cast saw many writers come and go, and I'm sure on their end it was really stressful and exhausting. Because as an actor,
that is spoken like a true actor.
As an actor, you want your writer to know you.
Right.
And to write to you and to know you in and out. And there you are, another writer.
Wouldn't you be polite?
Well, of course. I mean, he sounded very arrogant.
And rude.
And he probably hated being on TV.
I think that's true.
Yeah.
I think that he actually saw the show as something of a come down for him. Because he had come from Shakespeare and Broadway. And
I'm really sorry he wasn't nice to you. I would have beat him up if I knew that.
One of the things, at the time, our boys were very young. and we had 2 boys. We still do have 2 boys.
That's probably why I didn't have a part in Star Trek.
Maybe.
Maybe.
One of the elements of that episode I was doing for Jonathan Frakes was the whole father-son dynamic, and you actually gave me some great dialogue that I printed out here. I just want to read it to you really quickly. Someone says these are 2 women talking on board the Enterprise, and one says, in spite of human evolution, there are still some traits that are endemic to gender. The other says, you think they're going to knock each other's brains out because they're men? And then Deanna Troi says, human males are unique. This was your dialogue.
Yeah.
You said, human males are unique. Fathers continue to regard their sons as children, even into adulthood, and sons continue to chafe against what they perceive as their father's expectations of them.
Right.
And that was something you told me, and I remembered that. I said, this will be great in this dynamic. And it became... The nice thing about Star Trek was you could explore just about anything thematically as long as it was true to the characters. So I appreciate that. You gave me some great ideas and insights in terms of the characters, and that helped. And so that episode was pretty much a hit. It was the 14th episode of the 7th season. It aired in April of 1989. Oh my God, it's been a long time.
It has.
But in terms of story, it still holds up. It's still very highly regarded. If you go to imdb.com, you'll see people talking about it still. You know, it was also part of my instinct to go back to the classics. You know, it's called the Icarus Factor because of the Icarus Daedalus myth and the mythology of that. And I wanted to do all kinds of things like Troy, and I wanted to go back to Aristotle and a lot of that storytelling, and Rick Berman wouldn't hear of it. He wanted much more contemporary stuff. So he and I were kind of locking horns quite a bit.
So tell me about Maurice Hurley. What was he like to work with?
He was great to work with. I mean, he was a funny, exuberant personality, and he was always willing to just walk into Gene Roddenberry's office and start pitching his heart out. And then he would come out with his tail between his legs and said, well, we're going to rethink that one. And then he and I would go to lunch. But I had a great time with him just because he was fun. Mm-hmm. And actually, later on, he and I worked together. He brought me in on Baywatch.
Oh, boy, you really are admitting in front of millions of people that you worked on Baywatch.
Well, we'll talk about that later.
So the next podcast.
Well, and the next episode I wrote, which became kind of iconic and was really my swan song, my kiss off to Star Trek.
And what was the name of that episode?
The name of that was Samaritan Snare, and it was really about the anti-Star Trek, if you will.
And you also are going to tell us about the Star Trek convention you went to.
Oh, that's right.
You never were the same after that.
That's right. Yeah, I was really impressed and realized just then what kind of impact one series can have on a culture.
It was incredible,
yeah,
wasn't it?
It was just absolutely wild.
So we're going to wrap this up, and we want to thank all our viewers. And every week we're getting more and more viewers. We're getting terrific emails, and we hope to keep plugging along. We're still working on our book. Should we tell them the title yet?
No, you said we were going to keep that a secret.
Not yet.
But I would like to say we appreciate everybody that's going to the website at wherehollywoodhides.com. And when you do your shopping on Amazon.com through our links, it helps the podcast, and we sure appreciate it. Don't forget,
hey, the holidays are coming.
Christmas is coming. You're going to see some bargains up on the website. Don't fail to go there and check them out. All right, this is Bob McCullough.
And this is Suzanne Herrera McCullough.
This week's outro music is by Chance McCullough. Until next time, enjoy.